My name is Angell, Director of Progress. I'm chairing this breakout session with an excellent panel. The debate we are having, making investment work for communities where next are cities, and we have got a brilliant panel for you today to kick off this debate. Sue Murphy is the Deputy Leader of Manchester City Council and has done lots of work behind their combined authority, leading the work there in one of this country's most fabulous cities that was lucky to have a Labour administration in the city for a very long time, but working with central government made some very transformative changes, but haven't let us not being in power get in the way of demanding more powers and getting them to deliver them. Peter John is the leader of the neighbouring London Borough of Southwark, has been the council since 2002 and leader of the council since 2010. And he has only been last week. That was not in my notes. Next to me is James Murray. Most of you will know that he's just been appointed the Deputy Mayor for Housing at the City Council Authority, having just won a brilliant election across that city. Obviously, none of that was down to James. The city did all the heavy lifting, but James gets to be on a nice, pretty salary, it seems, and in City Hall, able to transform. Exactly, it's brilliant. But able to do real things about the issue I think most care most about. And Richard Upton is with us, Deputy Chief Executive of U&I, who are part of sponsoring today's excellent event and will be joining us on this panel. So, I'm going first to Sue.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. It's been a really interesting couple of weeks so far. I think we've had a debate this morning about local government and the ability of local government to do things. We've had the Brexit results, we've had the leadership crisis at the top of the Labour Party, Tory leadership that seems to be handling their crisis a lot better than ours. But this week, I was at Angell conference, Local Government Association conference, and it did really restore my faith in the Labour Party, knowing that there are a group of people who just want to get on and do stuff for the good of the communities that they live in and represent. It really did make it feel like it is actually worth carrying on, which sometimes it isn't. And I think that's because at the moment, Labour local government is the only place that can actually do things that deliver for people, and we can do it well. We do it a lot better than national government because we understand our communities on a level that they don't. And devolution is an enormous opportunity. Manchester is at the forefront of devolution, but there are lots of people chasing at our heels now, which is fantastic. We always said we didn't want to do it just for Greater Manchester, we wanted other places to follow as quick as they can. Because the powers that you have under devolution do put you in a unique position to actually shape your place in a really fundamental way. It gives you a much better ability to form partnerships, I think, and Manchester has shown how you can use some of those partnerships to really transform a place, particularly in the city centre. For those of you who haven't been to Manchester lately, it's been transformed over the past 20 years since I've been a councillor into a real buzzing, thriving city. We've learnt a lot from other places, from other cities in the UK and other cities in Europe, so we've used that knowledge to actually change. So there are some practical things that I think you can do at a local government level that actually help change the place. It's about really influencing resources. We know that it's very unlikely that local government is going to have the same level of resources that we used to. That's never going to come back. So what we have to be much better at is actually shaping what people are investing in our communities in a different way and making sure that it actually delivers for the people who live there. We can do that by providing a really clear, unambiguous framework, which means that investors have certainty and clarity without it being overly prescriptive, but does enable us to shape where that investment goes. And we have to be can-do authority, we have to be willing to work with the private sector to do this. And we need to learn, like everybody else, to do more for less. It also means being brave sometimes, taking big decisions that put you in the headlines. We were in the headlines a few months ago because we bought what, according to the Manchester Evening News, was a derelict shed for £2 million. They called it a derelict shed. We called it actually a key investment site on one of the major routes into the city that had a derelict shed on it, and we wanted to be able to influence what went there. So you have to ignore the noise and do what you know is best sometimes. It clearly works because the electorate voted overwhelmingly Labour in Manchester in the last election. We've got 95 out of 96 seats and we have more than 50% of the vote across the city. So brave decisions do pay off if people believe that you've got their best interests at heart. I think at the heart of that, we're the glue that holds all these things together. It's influencing investment in infrastructure, in housing, in businesses, but it's also we're the people who can link that to jobs, to employment, to growth outcomes, to worklessness, to everything that we need to do. And we're the people who can make sure that the growth we have in our areas is genuinely inclusive growth. We've had an independent economic review in Greater Manchester for a while. We're now working with the Joseph Roundtree Foundation to produce an inclusive growth strategy about how we get the best out of that investment for people who need it most. And that's what I think Labour Parties and Labour local government is all about.
Manchester to London.
Thanks very much indeed, Richard. As I was walking and I thought, oh, poor good pet. You know, she's getting protesters outside. I don't know if you saw this, you were right. And then I saw my own face on a poster. Apparently I'm wanting for social cleansing, dear oh dear. Colleagues, there's a lot going on in my borough, so in terms of regeneration, from the Upton Castle to the Aylesbury Estate, Peckham, Canada Water, Blackfront Road, you can see what's going on. There's a lot going on, that brings change, and change makes people unhappy sometimes. But I want to talk about two aspects of what we're doing in Southwark and why I think it's really important. I'm going to start with the Upton Castle, which has been referred to earlier today. You know, we've had quite a bit of negative press about what we've done there, and you know, how we built that scheme with our partners, Lend Lease. The Haygate Estate and the Upton Castle shopping centre is in Zone 1 Central London. You know, it's a mile away from Westminster. Yet for too long, it was a particular estate, from a few years after it was built, which was hard to let. The social fabric just didn't work there. There were problems with health, education, worklessness. And so 20 years ago, all of 20 years ago, the then Labour Council in Southwark decided to do something about it. And to knock down a 60s concrete estate, you know, it's a big decision, a brave decision, but absolutely the right thing to have done in the context of all those failures which I listed. In Southwark, at the moment, we have been investing in our council housing. Firstly, to make every council home more drone safe, and now to install new kitchens and bathrooms. But we have a vision of getting to a point where you walk through the borough and you do not know whether you're passing by a council estate, a private estate, privately rented housing, or housing association housing. It is all of that highest quality. And I think if you get that and you accept that and understand that, I think it answers every critic and every criticism of what we're doing. A book was published by, I think, the Observer's architecture critic the other day, and there's a chapter on the Haygate Estate. And his conclusion about the Haygate Estate was, you know, this was good enough housing. It was okay, it was adequate. For me, I don't think adequate housing is what we should be aspiring to for anybody, for our residents. We want everyone to have the very best and highest quality housing. And if you come down, if you wander down the road later on today and walked around some of the new housing that people have built there, you would see just that. I took a Labour MP who made it sympathetic to progress this Angell a couple of months ago, and I took around the new housing at the built at Upton Council, the first phase, around a fantastic public realm. And then I took her over the road to the new Castle Leisure Centre that we had built with planning game money just before it opened, and from which, in a couple of weeks' time, for a Southwark resident, you'll be able to enjoy free swimming and gym on Fridays, Saturdays and Sundays at Labour Council Building. And as we were walking around the leisure centre, a tear fell down Liz's cheek, and she said, I've just realised what's going on here. She said, and I've recognised that my aspirations for my constituents in Leicester are just too low, because what you are doing here, what you want to achieve here, it's not only to get the best housing and the best public realm, but the best leisure and best offer for your residents as well. And that is what Labour should be about. It shouldn't be settling for second best for our residents and our constituents. It should be about aspiring for the best. And that's what I don't get about people, some of those protesters outside. They think second best is okay. They would rather people live, I think, sometimes in slightly grotty conditions, because unless a council estate looks grotty and run down and is suitable for filming a vigilante film or World Z on the state episode, it's not proper council housing. Sorry, you're the ones who are letting down the residents of Southwark, not me. You're the ones whose aspirations are too low, not me. So that's the key to the elephant council, and I'm hesitating to make the case. I've got to wind up, but I just want to say this as well. Another thing we also did in Southwark, very early after 2010, was to recognise on some of these very key developments along the riverbank, getting affordable housing, 80% social rents, or a few shared ownership apartments, was also not good value for money. We could do more with that as a council, and that is the fund, in lieu payments on those developments, which is kick-starting our building 1,500 new council homes by 2018. That's a Labour council being inventive with how we use our money to provide the housing solutions that London needs in the face of a government, I'm sure as James will talk about, in the face of a government which appears to be ideologically opposed to social housing in all forms.
Wonderful. James.
This is on April. Well, thanks very much for having me here today. I've had a chance to cool down now, having run from the bus. I'm going to have to talk to someone about transport in the city. Who to talk to. No, but it's great to be here today, and it's great to be a power at City Hall. It is a real honour to serve under Steve Khan, to serve Londoners in the city I grew up in and love. Before I go on to housing, which I will do in just one moment, I just want to tell you about this time two Saturdays ago when we were marching in London Pride through the middle of London with Steve leading that parade, and he got to the rally in Trafalgar Square at the end. And his message was not just one of solidarity with the LGBT plus community, but he also said to all EU nationals across the city, you are welcome here. And that was such a positive message for Steve to send out, despite all the difficult context we're facing more widely. But, you know, Steve being in power is not just about what he can say and what he can represent, but it's obviously what he can do. And that's what's so exciting about being in power at City Hall, because it's not just talking about what we can do or thinking about what we can do or even campaigning for what we can do, it's getting on with it. And in terms of my brief, our top priority is housing in London. It's about raising investment in housing, and it's about making sure that investment works for all Londoners. Now, I realise the time is tight, and I won't go through all of the detail of what we're doing in London in terms of housing, but I just want to highlight 3 key tools that we're using in London through City Hall to try and raise the amount of homes and the amount of affordable housing within the capital. Firstly, the obvious one, affordable housing funding. There is a national pot which goes towards affordable housing, and we need to make a case that a substantial share of that needs to come to London, which reflects the scale of the housing challenge in London. But we want to move beyond just simply asking for more money or a bigger share of the money that's available, and to say that we want to use that public funding intelligently to leave it in other sources of private finance, to make sure that we are using it to enable sites, we're using it as infrastructure and investment to make sure that sites come forward and attract investment from a wider wider range of sources. We want to use that funding intelligently to work with partners like housing associations. We say to them, what do you need to get building more housing? What kind of relationship do we need with you over the next 4, 8, 12, however many years we're likely to be in City Hall? What kind of relationship do you need for us to use our public funding to support what you want to do? And crucially, when it comes to housing in London and how we're going to invest that money, we need to make the case for a range of different affordable homes. You know, there is focus on home ownership from the government, and it's absolutely right to help Londoners into home ownership. But we have to recognise there isn't a single route for Londoners into home ownership. There has to be a range of options. So the starter homes, particularly the cap, are not going to be affordable to very many people, because those are homes for £450,000. We need to make sure we have homes for people who have very low deposits or even no deposits so that they can save towards a deposit and buy their first home. So we need to have a range of routes into home ownership alongside some sub-market rent. Secondly, what can we do in terms of land? When you talk to any developers or housing associations or home builders, they say to you the problem in terms of bringing forward more housing in London is not necessarily the investment, it's not even planning, it's land. They just want more land to build those homes on. And so what we want to do through City Hall is lead by example by bringing forward more public land for development. Now there was some work done by the previous administration to map all of the public land in London through the London Land Commission. And I want to be very fair and say that it was a good exercise in terms of mapping all of the land which is available. But it literally mapped everything, every single bit of land owned by the public sector. And so when we were looking through the database, what they had identified, we noticed that they had a prime real estate opportunity of number 10 Downing Street on as a piece of public land. Now that's not exactly a brownfield development site and where you may get vacant possession at the moment. But it's, what we need to do is we need to work with different public sector agencies, whether it's TfL, with whom we have obviously a close relationship, Network Rail, NHS, or anyone else who owns public land in London, and work out how to bring them forward. And I suspect Richard might touch on what you and I are doing, which is a really intelligent use of public land to make sure that we have investment in the future. And thirdly, in terms of planning, we need to make sure the planning system in London enables development to come forward quicker, but it enables new models of delivery to come forward quicker, such as investment in long-term rented communities, which need a particular planning support. And we also need to use a planning system to make sure that the developments are benefiting all Londoners by requiring a decent proportion of affordable housing through the planning system. We are ambitious in terms of what we want to achieve through the planning system, but we're pragmatic and practical, and we're working with the development industry to do that in a clear and signposted way so that people know where we're going and can come with us and bring developments forward. Now, what I've been saying to you today, I've been going around London over the last couple of months, saying to as many people as I can to get people behind our plans. And my message all round has been we are ambitious, whilst we're being pragmatic and practical as well. We recognise this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint, in terms of delivery. And we recognise that City Hall is not all powerful. City Hall can lead, City Hall can bring people together, but if we want to deliver, we have to do it with councils, with housing associations, developers, investors, businesses, and everyone who has a stake in building homes for Londoners. And I'll just close by saying, although it is a marathon, not a sprint, there are some things which are changing already. We can see the new direction that we're heading in. There's a planning application, for instance, coming forward on Wednesday, which is in the Old Oak Development Corporation. And that's a planning application. When we inherited it, we had just over 30% affordable housing. We've worked with them over the last few weeks to get it up to 40% immediately, and we've got a review mechanism in there to get it up to 50% in due course. So you can see that already, even the first few weeks in power, just setting a new direction and working from day one flat out to improve the level of affordable housing, and we're making a difference already. It's also on Wednesday we're coming to plan, maybe that's my birthday, so if that gets through, that would be particularly nice. Actually, that evening for my birthday, I'm launching a report, which is that's how I roll. It's a report which is sponsored by Peabody Housing Association and the CBI about the business case for affordable housing, which I think really emphasises the breadth of the coalition, the breadth of the alliance that we have behind what we're doing in London. And if we can bring to that alliance, to that coalition support across London, the ideas and the energy and the determination to deliver, then we can really make London work for all Londoners.
I think I should stand up and admit I'm Richard Upton and I'm a property developer, which is quite often in a dinner party. Can you hear this? Not an easy thing to admit. Over the last 10 years or so, being a developer has either been a reason to jump off the ledge, an opportunity to collect a medal at the first out of the blocks first recession, or more recently a ticket to hell as the devil denying the poorest in our society the basics of a roof over their head. I've learned a lot in that time about what's true and what's not true, particularly about what property developers can do to solve many of our social and economic problems. We've even got some pictures for you as well, I think. Not least our housing problem. which is huge, of course. I'd like to share some of those truths with you, perhaps to inform a discussion on how we can make investment work for communities, what next for building cities. Sorry. So I'm Richard Upton, and here are my truths. The first one, thank you Richard for your IT support. The property sector is dull and lazy. The property sector is incredibly dull, spectacularly boring on average, in fact, and we have only ourselves to blame because it's dull on purpose. The businesses are very regularly run on spreadsheets, they tear up blank canvases and history and provenance, and baffle people with the science instead of inspiring with art. Treating property very often as a financial derivative, waiting quietly for the next boom to make more money. Words like inspiration, vision, imagination are dismissed as pure, suspicious fluff. Would you like me to change that? I'm intrigued on what I think. We'll stick on this one. Thank you, Richard. Property very often is about piling up profits amongst those who build, buy, let and sell buildings. The lack of land supply in our country is creating one thing only. Very often, private sector profit. There's still some outrageous gains being made for landowners, who I think is a societal gift, which is planning permission. There's a 19th century philosopher called Joseph Proudhon, I'm sure you know, who said property is theft. I actually agree. We all own property, we all own the land. Property developers who don't care brand their buildings as investments, saying to hell with anyone living life in and around them, very often chasing covenant strength like it's the Holy Grail. They wrench our physical environment from any societal concepts, ripping it away from people and their communities, often placing viability before sustainability. They cook up profits by seeing value where there's none, and often, very often, decimate value where it's abundant. Our identical high streets and our soulless dormitory blocks of flats are the result. House building, and to some extent property development as a whole, in the UK is dominated by a small number of large operators. 23 firms are responsible for 70% of housing sales. The standard business model of build out and sale at a gradual rate of absorption means that supply is tightly controlled, it's hard to accelerate, it's highly sensitive to market downturns. It's time for us as an industry to start thinking differently about business. Time for us to stop being dull. Time for us to start thinking more about people who will live, work and play in the places we create. Because in the end, they're the ones that bring the value. They're the ones that create the covenant by bringing their customers. They're the ones with the mortgages, the rent checks and the credit cards to spend money in the shops, restaurants and cafes that we build. So unless we stop being dull and inspiring people, we're never going to solve the problem for us today. We're never going to lift ourselves out of the just making do. It's the kiss of death for the people we're all here to serve. We can't get a step change in the responsibility of the property industry if we could get a step change in the responsibility of the property industry. We could achieve huge socio-economic change. So truth number 2, thank you Richard. Houston, we have a problem, as James said. So what's next for the majority of UK cities? A dysfunctional housing market with affordability for too few. If we can't sort it out, London and the other cities are going to lose their competitive advantage at a European or a global scale. Young people will never be able to afford to buy a home. The average house price in London is 11 times average earnings, up from 4 times in 1997. And across England, it's 7 times. The only thing we know for sure is that none of it is really working, and that's because we're only really tinkering at the edges. If we're only tinkering at the edges, we're never going to solve the problem. We're not even close. We need huge, radical, urgent solutions, nothing less. When the banks got into trouble in 2008, we invested £50 billion to buy their shares, 500 billion in loans. That's 500 billion pounds. That was a radical solution. I don't know why we're not thinking that this problem is just as serious. It's infrastructure. Housing is the most basic infrastructure of all. I have loads of ideas, James, about how we can deliver 1 million homes over the next 10 years. I'd be happy to share them with you all. Struggling with a cold, excuse me. Truth number 3. Thank you, Richard. The next slide is we really need to engage properly from the bottom up in this change, as the electorate has surprised us over recent weeks. Let's listen to a much greater degree. It strikes me that far too many proposals for investment in property regeneration are conceived vicariously from a distance. Consultation very often, we see it regularly, over a weekend in the holiday season, in a vacant shop with a few display tables. And still, as in this democracy, there's a tick box exercise. I fundamentally believe that we should invite communities in for as long as possible, into sites very early to inform and shape the cities of the future, not just put an expensively wrapped order to keep people out, perhaps around that derelict warehouse. So here's there's a couple of examples to give you some visuals. That first picture, sorry, going back on is platform just along in Southwark. It's a fantastic scheme. We've opened up a building that was squatted, a new vicar in there. We're doing consultation events not just for 2 days, but for 2 or 3 years. Go and have a look at it. In Deptford, the next slide, we bought a train carriage and opened it up as a cafe over 3 years now. A very dense development that we delivered. There was one national objection, it's probably the tallest building in Deptford High Street. People loved it. They engaged with us. We built trust. The next slide, thank you, Richard. Down in Brighton, we've done a pop-up makerspace that's fostering enterprise. It's there. It'll be there for 2 years before the development. Everyone knows about the development. Everyone engages with the local communities over a period of time. It's essential to inform the design process. Down in Greenwich, there's a train carriage. We bought it from Shoeburyness firing range for £6,000, and then painted it like that to bring people in. Down in Greenwich, the next slide, Richard, we've got a pop-up cafe. We had all sorts of readings there over the course of the year to engage again with the residents of Greenwich. It worked beautifully, and we built trust, we built collaboration and trust. Truth number 4, greater collaboration and partnership is needed. 40% of brownfield land across the UK is owned by public bodies. Over a quarter of our development portfolio is in innovative regeneration partnerships with the public sector. Projects like the next one, which is outrageous really. The building in the middle, the listed building, lovely building, been virtually empty since 2008, overlooks the houses of Parliament. Thankfully, we've just won this bid to work this asset for the public sector. We all own it in real terms. London Fire Brigade, Wanton Fire Brigade. So it's been empty since 2008, going through various procurement processes. There's a huge amount of land like this that could be put to more productive use. The next slide. And there's a warehouse at the back that we're going to turn into a pop-up fire museum. Because the Fire Brigade needs a museum as part of the consultation process. To engage with the local community who overwhelmingly rejected the last scheme, and I think probably for the right reasons. So I would suggest find partners you can trust. Focus on recurring socio-economic benefits, not immediate land receipts. The recurring socio-economic benefits make the land receipts look like small change. This is Lewisham, Deptford project. It's now finished. The train carriage is gone. Network Rail wouldn't allow us to bring it back. The next slide, Richard. There's some railway arches there that are all going to people who live within half a mile of this site. They're not going to brands, they're not going to Costco or Starbucks. We're building from the ground up, and it will make a better place. Truth number 5, the last one, promised. There's Bromley High Street. We love the suburbs of London. We like small towns. We like dull places. We like dirty places. We like making it better. It's not very sexy, I know, but it is for us. Last one, promise. Don't kill the golden goose. James, please, in planning terms with your colleagues and other councillors here, that is the character, grain and soul of our cities. There are applications for 436 towers across London. That's the pipeline. 436. Many of them are in the wrong place. Many of them are awful architecturally. There is no cohesive plan in London, no real plan for putting these towers. There's a place for them, we're putting them in the right places. Few of them contribute much to the housing crisis, really, providing housing for Londoners. Now, I do admit I sit on the committee for Historic England, and we're the last port of call before the Secretary of State for falling into this house. And I see applications not just from developers, but local authorities who are abusing views that have been enjoyed for 300 years from our royal parks just for a small amount of gain, just for the short term, that will kill the golden goose that is our beautiful capital city. In this Klondike rush for unit numbers, could we just pause for breath? Could we just stop and think about that for a moment? We might live to regret that abuse of this great city, and cities across the country as well. Once that character is lost, it will be lost forever. Density can be delivered in so many different ways. You don't need to reach up into the sky. Now, I could go on for more and more, but I won't bore you with that. The main truth I just wanted to say from the private sector perspective is that partnership, collaboration, vision, hope, bit of effort, and a sense of responsibility to really make a difference is what will work. If we can work together, we can make much more of a difference. Thank you.
Right, these shuffles over. Questions now from people on the floor. So if you want to stand up, say your name, what authority you're from, speak clearly and loudly so everyone can hear. This guy first.
Larry Kendler, London Borough of Harrow, carrying on to my theme from this morning. First of all, something none of you on the platform can deal directly with. If we ever get into government again, please scrap the National Policy Planning Framework. It's not for Westminster to tell us how to plan in our local areas. That framework is a catastrophe. But particularly from Peter, and particularly from James, I've heard a lot about expansion. I'm a retired housing manager. Reg Freeson in 1975, a Labour housing minister, said, housing management, and now I'm widening this, management of an area is the Cinderella of local government services. Here we are, 41 years after Reg Freeson said it, and we still haven't learned the lesson. What I see in my ward is a catastrophe. Overcrowding of traditional interwar small terrace housing, no investment, so I can't accept your point, Sue, that we're going to manage with limited money. We've got to invest in the street scene, keeping the area clean, managing the area, enforcement and regulation.
Please get to it.
The question is, we must invest not just in building, but in the street scene.
James Sumner, I was the last Labour Secretary Special Advisor and I've been Vice Chair of Planning in Camden and did the King's Cost Development, which is recognised as quite good development. But I think it could be improved. And I think one of the things, and interesting what the panel said, James touched on it, but it seems to me that there needs a big focus on rental housing in London and different models for that. I put a paper through Policy Network recently on more cooperative and co-owned style housing, which is geared for people on 20 to 50k. I think we need much more of that, and social enterprise, non-profit enterprises running those housing management services. So it's a different model than we have on local authority housing, and geared for actually a different bracket of people. And the second question is whether you can sort of talk about the different development model. I take your points if you may. It seems to me that authorities should be procuring right across the country instead of selling off the land to the developer. So then they have their 20% profit. You actually then direct a lot more of that. The risk is transferred. You can bring forward more of that rental housing, as described earlier, because you get income streams to public authority. You can do a lot more with it. And that, I think, is where we really need to put a lot of focus. And there's small examples of that, but we need many more examples of that.
Any more hands? The lady at the back there.
Marilyn Housing Association, tenant in Lambeth. After I heard James speak, I thought, oh my goodness, what about the real stakeholders, which is the public and tenants like me? You ran through a list of stakeholders, which didn't include us. Then I heard Richard speak and thought, hooray, at last. Will you please bear in mind that the people who are actually your customers are us, not all that range of stakeholders that you were mentioning. And actually, I think you seem to have there is quite a lot you can learn from Richard.
There we go. I'm sure they'll have all that. Let's start with there. So if I go on, James, you got to first.
Sure. No, I mean, just to respond to that comment, Marilyn. I mean, but when I started out saying what I was saying today, I was saying I'm thrilled to be doing this job because I'm here to serve Londoners. You know, and I'll never forget that London is ultimately my boss, obviously via Sadiq as the mayor. but it's ultimately Londoners who I'm here to serve, and I never forget that. And actually, having been a councillor for 10 years before doing this job, I really do understand people's individual housing crises. And I think that if you ask me what drives me, it's a lot of the individual people I met over the 10 years being a councillor, whether it's people who are in overcrowded social housing, whether it's people who are renting privately and desperate to get something more secure, whether it's people who are still living with their parents and can't work out how to get their place of their own. I think that wealth of experience is actually what drives me through it. And although I've been speaking to people across the industry in terms of developers and housing associations and councils, I also went to Hammersmith and Fulham the other day to speak at their tenants conference, to speak to tenants and leaseholders there, to get their input to it as well. And what we need to do is make sure that all of those people who can build housing, which is the councils and housing associations and developers, investors and so on, that they build the kind of homes that Londoners need. Because to a point that was raised from the floor, I think, about the total number of homes built, and Richard raised it as well. The total number of homes is really important, but what's as important as the total number of homes is making sure what sort of homes they are, and that a greater proportion of them are genuinely affordable. So I think we're only going to crack this if we work with all those partners who are actually going to do the building, but make sure they're building the right sort of thing to serve Londoners. So I hope that reassures you to an extent. Jake's point about rental housing, I think what's really interesting is that in London there is a real consensus across all people, whether it's Londoners themselves, all people who are going to be building housing, to business groups and investors and so on, that rented housing has a huge role to play in the London property situation, and that's a whole range of different rented products. So social housing, it's home to intermediate rent, it's better private rented accommodation. And what strikes me in terms of purpose-built private rented accommodation is that there's a huge amount of money apparently out there and keen to be invested. And what we can do in City Hall is make sure that we facilitate people to invest their money. So bringing forward the sites, bringing forward the right planning framework, and making sure that we're clear about making sure there is some affordable housing within that. Because I think that there is, when individual planning authorities get rented developments coming forward, because they're not conventional, they don't know exactly how to deal with it. So different authorities are making slightly different ways of dealing with it. And they're doing a good job, but they're kind of reinventing the wheel in lots of different authorities. So what we want to do in City Hall is give some guidance to that, to say that if you're going to invest in a rented development, that's great, it's brilliant to get that investment into London, and here's how we want to make sure that some of that housing is affordable as well, and give clear guidance on that to make sure that not only do we get the investors and the builders coming in, but to Marilyn's point, we're building homes that Londoners can afford.
And you offer scrap, the youth call on the government to scrap. What did you call it? The
National Policy Planning Framework.
I mean, the big problem with the National Planning Policy Framework is that it puts viability centre stage at the moment, and viability is something which it sounds techie, but it's actually crucial to what goes on in terms of development we get. And what that means is when you're arguing in terms of getting more affordable housing, more community gain out of schemes, people have disagreements about what kind of viability methodology to use when working out what schemes bring forward. What we really need to do straight away is to get some clarity about what viability methodology we use. So we're saying to developers or landowners, we want you to bring forward development, but if you're going to bring forward development, here are the rules we all agree on. And actually that's something that I've heard from councils and developers and housing associations. They all want clarity on that so that we can get forward, we move forward with development in a way that's really clear what contribution they have to make.
Can I just challenge that?
No, you can't. Right, two.
Okay. I think the way to deal with the national framework is actually to devolve power over planning frameworks to city regions or devolved areas. That's one of the most significant powers that we've got under our devolution deal, and it really gives you the opportunity to look at a place in its entirety. So, yeah, I would agree with you. Housing management, I think, is a really key issue. And it's not just about the houses, it's what goes on around them. There's been enormous developments in our city centre, as anybody who's been there will see. But it did mean that we are in a position where if we want people to stay in the city centre, because people who are buying city centre properties are largely young professionals who have successful careers, if we want them to stay, they're going to get married, they're going to have children, so we need schools, we need hospitals, we need doctors, we need dentists, we need all the stuff that goes with it, and the rental properties we have to be managed properly. One of our biggest developments in the pipeline is affordable rented housing, market rent housing for young professionals, probably people who are in their first job after university and we've talked as much about how those properties are going to be managed as we have about how we're actually going to build them, because it's really, really significant. And it is, what I said before, it's about the place. It's not just about what you build there, it's how you make it a living, breathing place. Tony Wilson, who many of you will know, have heard of, said the most significant building that opened in Manchester in the 1990s was the Spa on Sackville Street, because it meant that we've got to a state where people needed somewhere to buy the milk. So there's an awful lot to be said starting at that level.
Brilliant. Richard, can I bring you in?
Yes, thank you. Starting with viability, I guess. I agree. It's outrageous that we've created a system where the property development industry determines the amount of affordable housing we have as a society through a viability test. As the acres of paperwork and significant fees spent on, there must be 1,000 variables in a complicated development appraisal. I'm an expert in that area, so on working for Historic England as a neighbour on that committee, my job is to stop developers pulling the wool over the eyes of Historic England through viability testing, and it happens on almost every single occasion. I can't blame them all. They're driving the market rebates, and we can secure more affordable housing through the planning permission process. That makes sense to me. Housing management, totally agree. Large regeneration projects have a huge opportunity for us to think and get it better and learn from all of those mistakes. And there was Jake's point on working land better. Don't sell that. I lecture all the time to public bodies, do not sell your land. Pledge it, invest it wisely with a partner you can trust, and create value through the development process without necessarily taking risk. Or at least sharing risk, because you might be best placed to share some of that risk. And so in Lambeth at Clapham, I've got a Clapham Library, a beautiful building. And the Lambeth there got a library at no cost, got a leisure centre at no cost, got affordable housing at no cost, and a spectacular piece of architecture. And they keep the freehold, and they keep the library and the other space. We've just used the air very sensibly with a great piece of architecture. So sweat your land assets, don't sell them. And I would say, Jake, profit is not a dirty word. It takes significant risk. You need a margin on that risk. I'd say 20% might be too much. But I'd say 15% is too much.
Contract the developer to build the house.
But I'm saying make that margin transparent and reflective of risk, and then we might achieve a lot more.
Brilliant, thank you. Peter.
Thank you very much. Barry, I'm a bit worried about Harrow in 2 years' time. It sounds like a terrible place, but the streets are filthy. I mean, you need to get onto, you need to have a local council. But the points you were making were really important, and I think echo what I said about the Upton Castle, getting the housing and the public realm right of the highest quality when we're building. And I think, picking up Sue's point on management, it's absolutely vital. I don't think we do it well enough as councils. I'm not sure that the housing associations put it correct either, but it feels a bit like sometimes Aubrey Giuliani's broken window proposition. If you let the broken window remain unrepaired for a while, things begin to sink. And you see it, even on new housing we're building, people stuff loads of rubbish out on the balcony, and it begins to bring the whole appearance down. And we've got to challenge that. And, it can be sometimes tough to have these conversations with people, but it's really important in terms of building communities and maintaining those communities going forward. So really, really important point. And Jake, I thought James was going to talk about London Living Rent, but he kind of didn't. So I'm going to talk about London Living Rent, which I think is one of the most exciting propositions. Actually, it's something that we're certainly looking at with a number of developers on large private rental schemes, where rent is pegged as a proportion of people's income, and you can do it with bands, from all the way through from kind of 5% discount on market rent right down to almost social rent levels. And you might, by taking that approach, get a far higher proportion of affordable housing or some level of discounted housing through the scheme. I think it's really exciting. Lots of people are modelling it at the moment to see how it works, but I think it offers a really important way forward, because you're right to identify a problem. At the moment, certain parts of Southwark, what we're building meets the housing needs of maybe 25% of the population. Any social housing or housing association housing, at social rent, about 20% of the population might qualify for that. Then we know all about the long waiting lists. And then housing that is being built for private sale, 2% maybe of the population, and there's a little bit of affordable housing there. So we've got a swathe of over 70% of the population in the local area for whom no real product is being delivered apart from the private sector. And that's what we need to crack, and that's why I think we do things with a very variable discounted rent offer. And I think it's really exciting. I know it's not everyone's aspiration to live in rented housing permanently. That's kind of a very British thing, I suppose. And but in the reality of trying to provide a housing solution, I think is vital, and particularly for keywords and all those that we need to house in the city.
Thank you. Right, more questions. Again, say your name, where you're from.
Carl from Newham, and I could talk about London property for ages, but I do look at the map and there's probably a lot of other areas to cover that we're not going to. But I wanted to discuss it. We talk a lot about affordable housing, but when we look at the long term, when we've got, if we build affordable housing that is council housing, right to buy means that if we build nice houses, they'll become, eventually down the road, they'll become private market rent. If the housing association, this government is looking at bringing right to buy to that, so we're going to lose the affordable section of new build and that. And our current leader, I'm still keeping up to date on my phone to see whether that still is the case. He is, right, okay, may change by the time I finish. Hopefully. Is looking at bringing it towards the private rental sector. So how can we make sure that we have affordable housing, not just when it's built, but in the 20 years down the line, we've not just built a beautiful place for private rental?
Councillor Joshua Jones, I'm from Dartford, which sits under Kent County Council. We've not had a Labour government without winning Dartford, so I'll just throw that out there. Anyway. My question is, Kent is not going to get a devolution settlement. It's just not. It's not in that position. So how do we ensure that areas that aren't going to get these devolution settlements are left behind? Because certainly in Dartford, we feel that we get a lot of London's problems, but none of the access to the solutions. So I just want to know how you'd engage with those authorities.
Hi, Carl Brown from Bristol. I'm a great believer that there should be greater devolution and greater control over investment public funds locally. I just wanted to ask, if there is greater money being dealt with locally, are we satisfied that the local civil service has a range of experience and skills to deal with those greater monies? And if not, should we be looking to make the local civil service, for want of a better phrase, more sexy to attract more private sector people with skill sets and expertise?
I need to see some women's hands go up before I ask any more men. Yes, thank you. Where are you from?
My name's Janet Kent. I'm just retired as a Labour councillor in Liverpool City Council with 75% voting Labour. And I'm very concerned about the activities of the planning officers in housing. And I'll give you a brief example, if I may. Liverpool had, at its height, had 900,000 people living there just before the war, and currently it's just over 450,000. So we've got more brownfield sites than you can shake a stick at. So your London discussions are a parallel universe. So you've got a brownfield site going for, would take 30 dwellings on its footprint. I know the value of the plots, I know how much it costs to build a house. I know that the design that's coming to me as an elected member as part of the pre-application process is a courtesy. And I look at them and I think, in your word, these are deeply dull and my residents deserve better. And I make some suggestions. How about, it says a blank row, 4 or 5 terraces, 4 or 5 dwellings, 2 beds. They are very, very boring. Could you not have some porches that stick out and some porches that are recessed? How about we have some articulation on the roofs? We could have some 2.5-storey dwellings as well as some 2-storey dwellings, and that would just give it a bit of eye variety, you know, jolly it up a bit. And the reply is, thank you very much, Councillor, for your interesting suggestions. That's 2 fingers. And we'll look forward to hearing what the planning officers say. I know what the planning officer's going to say. He knows what the planning officers are going to say. They're going to tick their boxes and it'll all go through and you'll have a very dull little enclave. What do we do about the planning officers?
Don't the planning officers work for you?
Oh no, I'm a really very unimportant backbencher. They're very important, wearing killer heels, smart suited, very opinionated. What do I know? Okay. They make the recommendation to the planning committee. If the planning committee turns it down, go to the planning inspectorate in Bristol, and the Bristol will charge them a local legal fees.
Any more people want to come to the table? I will take some more questions from men, but I'm going to want another woman to put their hand up before I do. Okay. You're not going to do it, then men will lose their questions. No, you lose your question, so you can convince the sisters to put a hand up. That's how it works. Right, back to the panel, I'm afraid. Let's start with Sue. Wow.
I won't try and answer all of them, I'll try and do 1 or 2 then. Right to buy, I feel quite ambiguous about it. It was a really successful policy, but it's in my ward, for example, the big social housing estate, over half of it now is owner-occupied. People who bought it when Right to Buy first came out have now, their families have inherited it largely, and it's now private rented, and it poses an enormous management problem. So I do think that we have to do something about that, and I've got a solution.
And why are we demanding in the devolution deals that when it's sold, the money stays in local government to be reinvested in the same way? I mean, that seems to me to be, because this was a Labour idea in '75, and that was the idea, to reinvest the money to do it. And for some reason we never convinced Gordon Brown to do it, or Alistair Darling, and it doesn't seem to be one of the things that's on the table being asked for, either from Sadiq or in the city deals.
It absolutely needs to be asked for, because we can't, it goes back to the management question, doesn't it? We're not able to manage those estates properly now, so there's a mix of social housing still, but with poor quality now, and houses that have been bought and privately rented. It's a really big issue, I think, in a lot of the northern cities. I'll touch on the experience to deal with money in local government. Yeah, we're really good at it. I wouldn't worry. We've got lots of good officers with lots of experience, and I think we're more imaginative than central government and sometimes the private sector in actually putting the deals together. We've had a fantastic city treasurer who's just retired and has been replaced by a woman city treasurer, which for a city like Manchester, I think is fantastic. And it's having ideas and not being afraid to actually test them and suggest things that are out of the ordinary and haven't been tried before, properly evaluated, and being able to do brave things. Be brave, because we can be, we're good at it. I think some of the best people in local government now, not rather than national.
Sue, while you still got the mic, this lady's question was partly about the kind of planning being very different outside London. So what can be done to build those planning office into your vision for the city? Because there's clearly a breakdown between what is great leadership in Liverpool, but who is delivering that bit in the ground in some of these communities, and what, have Manchester done it differently, or is it the same problem in Manchester?
I think we have a similar sort of problem. It's the difference, isn't it, between people who see themselves as custodians of the quasi-judicial process, the officers, and people like local councils who think they want something better for their areas than they've got. I'm currently involved in a row between planning department and our corporate property section, who both disagree about what should be done with the site. I want something that neither of those are suggesting. So really, I think I know better than either of them what should be on that site. So we need more imagination and interaction.
Richard? We've got also imagination.
Imagination, yes. Maybe we should try and create a stigma for somebody who does a really bad job. You know, and there's far too many examples of very poor quality approach to design. But it's becoming less regular, and just to counter the point of needing to drag sexy people from somewhere else into the local authority offices, which is difficult in some of their offices because they're more miserable perhaps than some of the private sector offices in managing their costs. But there are some, the last 10 years I would say has been a massive change in the quality of local authority delivery at planning level. Certainly in London, so definitely within the GLA and the planning team that is delivering some first-class solutions for London suburbs. Out in the Shires, it can be different. I have a project that's a good example of a few answers to questions, perhaps. The hub and spoke. I worry about all this entrenchment of places. Because actually, when you're out in the street, you just cross boundaries. You just walk through the country, or jog or cycle or whatever. You don't see those boundaries. And there's a housing crisis certainly in London. But if you take a train for 56 minutes out of Waterloo, you get to London Bridge, you can get to Sittingbourne. And I have a project at Sittingbourne transforming town centre. And property prices there are £250 a foot. You can't build for £250 a foot, let alone buy a completed house or flat. We'll be renting some of those flats for 400 to first block 400 to £825, which is very affordable for something within an hour of London. And so I just wonder about this sort of parochialism of a place. The only issue is it costs £4,165 a year to get a season ticket. So maybe there are other policies, joined up policies about hub and spoke, where we might give a discount to those earning less than 30,000 to travel in. Because there's a sea of housing and fields and lakes and medieval high streets and lovely things just over there. And so perhaps we just need to think a little bit bigger about where place is and how all of these places join up. Perpetuity and the affordability of perpetuity is a really interesting point. And the London living wage and how that works in its construct, the complexity of that is how it works in perpetuity. It binds into the land through Section 106. I think there's a huge opportunity to deliver some urban regeneration projects and community land trusts, where the developers and local authorities all put their land in together, and then you've got the perpetuity argument secure, because the community land trust, which might manage that estate, might also manage the affordability and the quality of change over time. And the best example is the landed estates, who keep hold of their freehold and then just reinvent. And by definition in London and the South East, it's a very good investment over the long term. If you capture that value over the long term, you can feed that back into affordability rather than privatising. So perhaps there's some examples of community land trusts to keep affordability and quality for the long term.
Peter.
Thanks very much. A couple of some really good questions. Carl, obviously the housing planning bill is a massive challenge to us and to our aspirations of the council housing we want to. But I think we've got to, and as a progressive local council and those on the progressive with the party, I think we've got to think about outcomes rather than absolutely be rigid about the means by which they're delivered. And what's council housing about? It's making sure that we've got properly affordable housing for people to live in. That's the outcome that we want. And therefore, whether it's owned by the council or some other mechanism or body, I think is what we need to concentrate on to try and take the government on some of those things. And Richard spoke very well in answer to Joshua about some of the issues, because obviously, the problems that London experiences don't stop at the borders of Bromley. Well, actually, they start before Bromley, because Bromley isn't wanted part of London. But it goes way beyond, and obviously there are discussions, and again I know James has been talking about homes for Londoners, so that we look beyond our strict boundaries of cities to how we solve the problems of London's housing crisis. I think in fairness though, London has to show that it's not just passing the problem outside, that we are prepared to take on and tackle some solutions. But I think there is every reason to look at that wider solution.
Is there anything in this Enfield model where they're building new homes but they own it through a separate company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm not quite sure what the answer is, because the government, wherever a local authority is involved in the ownership, the government's going to come after it at some stage. It hasn't been afraid of after housing associations, and so who have this government not gone after yet? And it's probably private capital, so it's kind of some private capital solution, private company solution, wholly private company solution. I don't know, but if we get the outcomes we want, that's what's important. And Janet, the risk isn't the value engineering and just not being exciting enough. What I talk about obviously is having the very best people in our council, housing, what we're building, but we've got a design standard for that, and we won't accept anything less. Because I think it's a completely false economy as well. Richard probably would agree with this. If saving a few £1,000s off the build of a property by putting in slightly crappier windows and crappier doors, means that they're the doors that fall off the windows that people are replacing and make the place begin to look rubbish years earlier than it needs to. So, invest in building and you're investing in people, and that's got to be a Labour thing.
James?
To start with the point about planning officers, I think there's an interesting situation in London. I will be parochial just to give my experience of it. In the planning departments across London have been reducing over the last few years because of the pressure on local authority budgets. And although there are some excellent planning officers doing excellent things, there's also a general feeling that more capacity within planning could be good, particularly on the big schemes which are coming forward to make sure they're well designed and so on. And again, it's interesting, my having talked to councils and to developers and housing associations and so on, that they all kind of agree that if there was a bit of flexibility over the fees locally, so you could say we might raise the fees a bit in exchange for service transformation or a better service, high quality service, more predictable, more certain, and so on. There's a different appetite amongst the applicants to pay for that extra fee if they get a better service, and then the public benefits overall by getting a better scheme. So I think there is a question to be had about capacity there more broadly. In terms of, I think Carl mentioned about greater devolution over taxes and incomes and so on. And Steve has set out quite clearly that he believes London should have control over a full suite of sources of revenue. I think that part of it is not just about getting more money, but it's about getting a certainty over that income stream. So rather than money being handed out on a kind of, an annual or even 3-yearly basis, actually have a predictable income stream over the long run that you can then work out how to invest over a number of years. And there's also more local models about saying, okay, if we're going to do this particular project and you build this number of homes, can we have an agreement whereby, let's say, the first round of stamp duty is ring-fenced to pay for that project that we've just done? So rather kind of clever models where you can encourage development. I know there's one, I think it's Darren Rodwell's leader in Barking Council. He's got a very ambitious plan and a brilliant idea about sinking a road there, and then building homes on top, and then using the stamp duty from the first round of sales of all the homes to effectively pay for the whole project. So really kind of stuff like that. It's more about control and about predictability over income than necessarily always the amount. I mean, the amount always nice to have more, but I think it's as much about certainty and control. Josh's point about the rest of the South East as well. I mean, we're meeting with some of the rest of the South East leaders in the coming weeks to discuss making sure that relationship works well. Because obviously, we have to think about, if you're living outside London, what infrastructure do they need and how to help solve London's housing crisis. But I think it's really important we don't duck the question about building homes in London. And if we're going to build homes in London, it doesn't mean we're going to have to build more densely, which means we're going to have a public discussion about what does high density but well-designed housing look like. So that people don't think high density is just big towers. Also thinking about well-designed medium-rise buildings and how can you get density in residential places where people actually want to live, are attractive and so on. So I think there's a big question to be had that we can't just. It's important to have a relationship with the rest of the South East, but not to rely on that entirely. To make sure that we're taking our burden in London and coming up with those ways of building more homes within the city boundary. And then finally, I think it was Carl's point about affordable housing perpetuity. As Richard said, it's absolutely vital that if the money is being raised through right to buy sales, that money is then reinvested in new affordable housing within the capital. One of the big issues that councils have at the moment is that the money, some of the money is retained by the council to invest in new housing, but there's a huge number of conditions over it about you can only spend it on a proportion of the new build, you have to spend it in a certain time period, or the raising interest in the community. There are too many restrictions on how that money is reinvested. And if we could get to a situation where councils are allowed to genuinely control the reinvestment of that housing in new affordable homes within London, yeah, that would be a really important, a really good position to be in. And in parallel to that, we're having conversations with housing associations, because if the right to buy the promise goes ahead in the way that they suggest it might, we need to make sure that housing associations in London are reinvesting money they raise in new affordable housing within the capital too.
Thank you. We come to an end for this session, but thank you very much for all your questions. Sorry I couldn't take all of them. I'd like to thank you and I in particular for partnering with Progress on this whole conference, but in particular this session. I think Richard's contribution was particularly lively, and I enjoyed being his glamorous assistant with the AV. But thank you to James, and good luck with your new role. Thank you to Sue for coming down from Manchester, and good luck with what you're doing in Neighbourhood Borough. It is now lunchtime. Lunch is not provided in your £5 fee, but there are lots of lovely places provided in the local area. Please be back at 1:30 for the keynote with Mayor of Liverpool, Joe Anderson. Thank you.